Hello, this is Sean Phillips. This is Module 8 from EDL 853, a case study entitled Get This Child Out of My Room. Before we get too far, let's talk a little bit about this case. In general, here are some of the key individuals involved in this case study. First, we have a student, Carl Hughes. Carl is a student that has been diagnosed with a behavior disorder. He is currently on an IEP for this. He is in the classroom of Nancy Taylor. She's a respected veteran teacher who's been at the district for a while and seems to be liked by many. There's also a SPED teacher in the story named Susan Green. Susan Green is new to teaching. In fact, she's right out of college, and she's replacing a veteran teacher that's retired. So she has some big shoes to fill. We also have Mr. and Mrs. Hughes, that's Carl's parents in this, who are currently divorced, and they are having some issues with that process. And this all happens at a school called Schuyler K-12 Comprehensive School, and that happens in the Fulton School District. All of this is in a rural setting where there are multiple towns that make up the district, and so it's really spread out with various size schools for this. So with all these individuals, what's happened? Well, Carl has become increasingly violent. His behaviors have become worse, and Mrs. Taylor feels unsafe herself, and she's worried that Carl could become violent towards the individual students. So she has requested that Carl be removed. Throughout the course of this, trying to get into contact with Carl's parents has been very difficult because Miss Green, wanting to alter the IEP for Carl, needs to get into contact with them, but she's having trouble getting them involved. And then when they are, they seem to be very hostile towards each other. We know that they have joint custody, but Mrs. Hughes seems to feel that Mr. Hughes is not doing his part, and thus causing her not to be able to do much with Carl. There is a new IEP planning to be put in place, trying to get Carl removed from class when he gets angry, hopefully to try to get him away from those students and try to get him to calm down a little bit. So that's the current process, hasn't actually been put into place yet. We do know that he had a previous IEP with kinds of an incentive-based thing where he could get some privileges either rewarded or taken away, but that doesn't seem to be working at this point. So based upon all that, what are some things that we know? Well, we know that violence is a big issue here. Mrs. Taylor obviously seems to think that this violence could be directed towards herself already and then potentially students, so that could be an issue. We know that that scares Mrs. Taylor, and she doesn't know what to do, so she's tried to find out if Carl could be actually removed from her classroom. We know that the parents' relationship seems to be kind of strenuous on Carl and could be a potential reason for why he's been acting out. It's something we still need to investigate, though. We know that there is a new IEP intervention in place where Carl will potentially be removed by a staff member when he tends to get angry and have outbursts. We also know that Carl functions at a high level. From an academic standpoint, he is fully capable of succeeding at his grade level, so that is not an issue. But we do know that he has emotional problems, and now his behavior issues seem to become sudden. Just out of the blue, he seems to blow up, and if you ask him about it, he doesn't seem to have a reason why. And we know that that previous behavior intervention plan is not working for him. The idea of incentive-based things, he makes the comment that he doesn't care if his privileges get taken away. So we need to reevaluate that and figure out what we need to do. So what do we need to know? We need to know if he is actually dangerous to students, because that's something we don't want to have happen. We need to know if he's receiving therapy. It's obvious that the family condition is broken down and the relationships between all parties is strained. So we need to see, is there any type of counseling that may be going on that could help him with that. We need to see, are there any new medical issues with a sudden change in behavior that's now becoming a little more spontaneous? Is there something medically going on that could be an issue? Has Carl been taking meds? We know that in the story, Mom mentions if she should give medication to Carl, that were his brother's Ritalin. Well, is Carl taking some medication that maybe Mom doesn't know about already, and that could be causing some of the issues? And then we need to try to figure out what causes the outburst. Carl says he doesn't really know, but if we watch enough, can we figure out what a trigger might be? So, what's the problem then? The problem is, why is Carl becoming more violent, and what is the proper placement to provide an appropriate education in the least restrictive environment? We want Carl to have a good education, a quality education, and we also want everyone else to benefit as well. So what would I do? My plan of action would entail first starting some data collection and documentation. We need to have someone in class with Carl watching what happens and see if we can find a pattern for what triggers his behavior. You can only do that through documentation. I think a para in there collecting data would be a good thing. And also have Miss Taylor document anything that she thinks of when any of these issues arise. Second, I think it would be good to do a reevaluation of behavior. If his behavior has changed, maybe there's a medical reason why. So I think we should try to test him again, obviously with the approval from parents through an IEP process. We need to come up with a new behavior intervention plan. It's obvious the old one is not working. So I think part of that would be possibly, providing him with some opportunities to leave the classroom, as they had suggested before, or maybe it is a case where, depending on what the reevaluation says, maybe he needs to have little bigger chunks of time where he is not in class and be removed for a little bit longer to where maybe he can get rid of some anxiety or anything like that. But that will all depend upon the testing and data that's collected. I also think that we probably need to do some training with our staff, whether it be para or with the teacher as well, trying to deal with some students that might have behavior issues. That way, hopefully, we empower them with some tools to be able to deal with it a little more effectively. I think it would also be good to provide Carl with some counseling and suggest maybe parents get some counseling for the family as well, because if Carl has some pent-up emotion based upon the situation that his parents are in right now and how that's affecting him, that would be good for him to be able to talk with somebody about that. I do think maybe, at least initially for a while, we should provide continuous para support. That way there is someone there to help calm him down and soothe him a little bit. Ideally, maybe someone that's a larger person if possible, because it tells us in the story that Carl's a pretty good-sized kid as well. But having that para there the whole time, I think, will be beneficial. I think we need to schedule an IEP meeting. That way we can put all these things in place and try to get parent consent to do so. I think we should try to look for Carl to get a place to connect to school. If he connects, hopefully he wants to come to school, and that will help build a little more positive relationship. We know in the story that it says that he basically feels like every adult that he's ever known has kind of left him for the most part. And unfortunately, if it gets to the point where he is like an extreme danger to students, then we may have to think about a manifestation hearing to see if that actually is because of his disability or not, and decide if maybe he needs to be not at our school anymore. So what's best for all students in this case? Well, the preferred option that I would have is first full inclusion. We want Carl to be in class all the time. We want him to be able to manage his emotion, and we want all students to interact with him and build a good, strong learning environment that way. We also would want to have new interventions put in place based upon the IEP, whether that's leaving classroom, maybe it's an alternate placement for part of the day, whatever that may be based upon our evaluation. But definitely the new interventions for sure. I think the support service is going to be good for all students because if we provide counseling for Carl, hopefully that makes him a little less on edge, and so that makes it better for each student as well. The second option that we could do is only if necessary. Maybe adjust his placement if being in a class for a full day is too much for him, but this is only if we absolutely have to. That would all be based upon the findings that we would get from the testing or data that's collected. The worst case scenario would be if Carl continues to get worse and becomes dangerous and physically harms other students, then we would have to see about removal altogether, expulsion, or maybe not to that full extent, but it may be a permanent place to go to that offers programs for students that have emotional disabilities. So what was I thinking as I went through this? Well, first, I'm thinking that I have to get this addressed for both the student and teacher. Neither one of them are having a good experience right now with school, and so that has to be addressed so that we can handle that for them, but also all those students in class as well. I was thinking, what are some different ways that we can get Carl to let out some of this frustration, different ways for him to vent? Because if he can get rid of some of that emotion, it won't be pent up, and maybe it won't just be bursts of emotion, and he can let that flow out a little more smoothly. I was thinking, man, we've got to find the root of this problem. Is it something that's medical? Is it emotional? Is it just, reaction to his parents? So we need to get that figured out. And I'm also thinking I've got to keep everyone safe. People cannot be afraid to come to school. So what was I feeling? As I go through this, I'm feeling sad for the student. Obviously, he's in a situation that, is not good. He feels a lot like, I think his parents, relationship is deteriorating, and I think that's carrying out on him, and so I feel bad for him. I feel like the parents are the big root of the problem and cause maybe some of his disabilities to maybe manifest themselves a little bit more. I feel that Susan Green is feeling pressure because she knows that she's got a very favorable person that she's replacing, and trying to fill those shoes is hard. I'm feeling like I got to bring staff together. This is a touchy subject, and it can't be where somebody feels like something is forced upon them. They have to work together to solve this. Because I do need to support quality teachers. If teachers don't feel supported, then they leave, and we don't want that to happen. And then I also feeling I have to figure out how to balance a level of expectation versus disability. We will have an expectation of how students are supposed to behave, but how do I balance that with what a student's disability might be? So what did I value? Well, I have always valued providing a quality education. I want all students to feel prepared for the future. I value following the law. An IEP is a legal binding document, so I feel like that should be followed. I value students feeling plugged into school, somewhere that they can connect, where they want to come to school. I value staff collaboration, because if you feel like you're involved in the game, then you're going to put in greater effort into it. And I also value a safe learning environment. People can never be afraid to come to school or work. So what are some unresolved issues from this? We don't know yet if those interventions are going to work. We don't know if Nancy Taylor is going to be on board with what we're trying to accomplish. We don't know if the parents will ever get back together, or if they will completely sever ties. Maybe somebody moves away. We don't know if there are alternate placements around in this rural community. Is there a place where he could go if the regular classroom is not for him? And then if we do that, how am I going to transport people that far? I'm going to have to dedicate an individual, a vehicle, and come up with funding for that, and also funding for the training to try to prepare people to deal with those students. So how can I promote academic success of every student? One, well, I'm promoting the academic success for Carl by putting him in the least restrictive environment. That allows him to be with his peers, where he can get the best education possible. I'm getting academic success for him as well by providing strategies and interventions that are going to allow him to be able to be more productive, and that also in turn helps students because they will be less distracted in class by Carl and be able to work more on their academics. By providing training, that's going to promote academic success because it's going to hopefully provide tools for the teacher to be able to be a better instructor when dealing with any students that may have these types of issues. And, if there's time away, that does promote a safe environment. If Carl is not in classroom for a little while, that at least provides some time where students can not have that type of distraction. And when teachers feel supported, they're going to, put more effort into what they're doing, and they will provide a better education for students. By removing him, if we would have to do that completely, that also is going to provide a situation where Carl is gone, and now everybody can be in a safe, healthy environment. Promoting personal well-being. Well, how do I get personal well-being from everybody? Well, by promoting the strategies and interventions again, it also is going to promote safety. If Carl's not blowing up, then we have less chance for teachers to feel afraid and students to feel afraid. By providing support services for Carl, that's going to promote his own mental well-being, and also, again, within the classroom, it'll help students as well if they don't have to worry about Carl as much in terms of any aggressive outbreaks. Providing timed vent, again, that's just kind of a safety mechanism for Carl where he can get rid of some of those negative thoughts and feelings, where he can be in a healthy environment when he's at school. And teacher training is also going to promote well-being for all parties involved, for dealing with Carl, for the teacher feeling confident in what they're doing, and also for students then having a better environment to work within. And then the removal, if he's removed from class, it's because he's just not going to be safe around students or to himself, and so that would be a better situation for all. So, enhancing instructional capacity. The way that I did that was the reevaluation. We're bringing more information, more knowledge into the situation so that we can know what we should do better. I'm also enhancing instructional capacities by increasing the toolbox of teachers to be able to deal with these situations that are arising. By providing training, I'm giving them more tools as well to deal with any issues that may abound. Also, collaboration. All of us are smarter than one of us, and so getting all of us together on the IEP provides a better learning environment. Coming up with another option or a different placement could provide better services, which that brings increased instructional capacity by new alternatives. And, by doing those, and I think we will put together a quality environment there for Carl. So hopefully this works out. Thank you.